What is up, guys? Welcome to episode 18. Sorry I'm late. Sorry I haven't been posting. A couple weeks where I was watching the parents' house, all this type of stuff. So I'll be more regular though, I promise. And I appreciate all of you tuning in. In the description, I got this workout that I'm doing, the full details if you guys want to follow along or try it. And I got a link for coaching, joining the free Discord community, 30-day challenge, kettlebell course, buy kettlebells and maces and clubs, all that stuff. I got it all in the link in the description below, so check that out if you have any interest whatsoever. But anyways, I appreciate you guys listening. Let's get right into it. So what am I talking about today? Fasting. And I've talked about this on this podcast before, but I think it was a little while ago, so it's time to revisit the topic. And I thought it would be useful to talk about why I've been fasting for the last 10 years and why I put all my clients on intermittent fasting. We'll talk a little bit more about that. How I fast, so how my practice looks today, I consider it a practice. It's taken me 10 years to get to this point, and it's not been easy. It's been quite the journey. I've read tons of books, studies, all that stuff. I did study neuroscience in college. That's what I got my degree in, and that's why I got super interested in it at that point. Anyways, so I've been delving into this practice on, not only like a reading, learning perspective type of way, but actually practicing it myself. And then finally, what you shouldn't do. What are the mistakes that I made? What are the mistakes that I see countless people make? Because get this, I have in the link in the description below, you'll see there's a coaching application. I get tons of people applying, and I have conversations with them. And 8 times out of 10, these people are fasting. They say, "Oh, I practice intermittent fasting, blah blah," but they still don't have their goals. They still don't, haven't lost the body fat they want to lose. They don't feel the full benefits. And of course, it's not just fasting. It's all about what you eat, how you train, what your fast looks like. But let's focus on the fasting aspect today because I think there are a lot of people out there who think that they're doing intermittent fasting correctly, but they're doing it very wrong. They're setting themselves up for failure and they're not capitalizing on this extremely beneficial practice. So, I'm not going to dive into studies and things like that on this. You can look that up on your own or don't take my word for it. Go ask ChatGPT, go surf the web and find all the studies and information and watch other videos and stuff like that. There's a lot that goes really deep in on this topic, of course, but I'm going to stay very high level. So, why fast to begin with? And obviously, I think the main reason that draws most people in is to lose weight, to maintain a lean, shredded physique year round, not be on yo-yo diets, not have to worry about, exactly what you're eating and count calories and all that. And not that that's not important, because fasting is not an excuse to eat whatever you want. But I think that's what draws people in is first and foremost the physical aspect. And then, of course, to promote health and longevity. More importantly, or more specifically, rather, to avoid the main three killers, especially of Americans: cancer, type 2 diabetes, heart disease. And these all stem from metabolic dysfunction, which we'll get into. So, metabolic dysfunction is the main driver of what's killing most people nowadays. And that is just having to do with the fact that people don't go long bouts without eating. They're eating the wrong food, they're eating the wrong food at the wrong times, and they're not moving enough. So, that leads to all these horrible diseases, which are, for the most part, avoidable. Do genetics play a part? Yes, but we're all dealt a certain hand. Are we just going to follow suit in that, or are we going to find a better way to live and maybe try to counteract the hand that we were dealt? And another reason to fast is enhanced mental abilities. So what drew me in as well when I first started was not just the physical, was not just the health. If you have ADHD, if you have depression, if you have anxiety, all of these things can seem almost inescapable. And that's why so many people turn to drugs. And it's the easy out. Give me a pill, I'll feel better. There's nothing else I can do. That's what we're taught. That's what a doctor told me in college when I went to see a psychiatrist about this, about ADHD specifically. Yes, I was diagnosed, and I've talked about that on this podcast. And this guy had no interest in learning about my lifestyle, my diet, my sleeping habits, whether or not I did drugs or drank alcohol, anything. My past, my history. Apparently, it's a blanket problem and a blanket solution. And he told me this. Only the drugs work. And I said, what about switching up your diet, meditation? Only the drugs work. So that's how a lot of these doctors think. Not every doctor, of course. There's a lot more with it people, but that's kind of the main consensus, and a lot of people buy into that, and a lot of people want to buy into that. That's why if you try to tell a lot of people who are on depression or anxiety medication to get off, they get very defensive, almost like you're insulting them personally, because they don't want to get off of it. They want the quick fix. People want a quick fix, especially Americans, and that's why we're in the position that we're in, being the unhealthiest nation in the world, despite being almost the most advanced in a lot of ways. We should not be the unhealthiest nation in the world, but because our whole society is run on convenience and in consumerism, we're in this position today. So finally, why to fast? Simplicity and minimalism. You don't have to cook breakfast. You can kind of just get going with your day. If something comes up when you're about to break your fast, you have the wherewithal to push that out and continue being productive or doing what you need to do. Or, if you're stuck in a situation where you can't get food, you're not dependent on food. That is a very freeing thing, to be able to condition your body to be able to go long bouts without eating so that you can live your life and not kind of be tethered to these breakfast, lunch, and dinner and snacks in between. Like, that is freedom. Being able to go long bouts without eating is a skill. And finally, and this is why I honestly curate my whole brand around this, I call it Primal Instinct. Why do I call it Primal Instinct? Because when you fast, hold on, my dog, Bruce, stop it. Sorry about that. When you fast, um, you start to hone in on your primal instincts, right? And what I mean by that is, unless you feel real hunger, which nobody ever gets the chance to feel today, they go 2 hours without eating when they were normally supposed to eat, and they start to feel like they have a headache or they're weak or they need food. Again, it's that dependency. But when you start to actually feel real hunger, go 16 plus hours without eating, it tells you a lot. It tells you a lot about your cravings. It tells you a lot about how what you ate previously affects your body and how you feel. It tells you a lot that I can't even really put into words. It's very feeling based. And this is what can start to guide you. You want to hone in on your primal instincts, because this is what I believe health stems from. This is how we evolved, right? And we don't get to tap into any of this anymore because we're constantly numbing ourselves with food and whatever, right? So let me switch gears into kind of how I fast now. This again, it's taken me 10 years to get to this point. Does it have to take you 10 years? No. But I've had a lot of these kind of problems like ADHD, eating the wrong foods. I was a huge breakfast person, so I went back and forth a lot at the beginning. I wasn't consistent. I messed up. I was doing it wrong. Blah blah blah. We'll get into that. But this is what I do nowadays. So every day, I wouldn't even consider it fasting. I would say every single day I practice what's called time restricted eating, which is kind of a different way of looking at it, right? I have a time slot during the day in which I eat, an 8 hour window in which I eat. And more importantly, and that this is why I don't really consider it fasting, because 16 hours, it's really not fasting. I would consider anything maybe above 20 hours a real fast. That's when you're really completely depleted of glycogen. Your body has to start tapping into stored body fat, and you're going to feel that kind of discomfort and whatnot. But I think 16 hours is pretty, I wouldn't consider it a fast. So I call this more so time restricted eating. And the most important thing that I do with this 8 hour window is I end it 2 to 3 hours before I go to bed. And this is what most people get wrong. You must have that fixed time. So if I miss my first part of my window, let's say my window is 12 to 8, and I missed those first 2 hours and now it's 2 p.m., I'm not going to shift it from 2 to 10 now, because that's what a lot of people do. They'll try to starve themselves into the late afternoon, drinking black coffee, blah, blah, blah. We'll get into that of what not to do. And then they'll just push their fast later on in the evening and be gorging themselves to the moment they go to bed. And that's not what you want to do. You'll notice that when you follow what I'm saying and keep that window set, no matter what, and the more important part of that window is when it ends. So even if you miss that first part, you hold yourself to that when it ends part. It doesn't mean you need to stuff yourself with the 6 hours you have left. I think you get the idea. But you want it to end 2 to 3 hours before you go to bed, because that will help you sleep better. Your body, you want to sleep. You want your body to rest, recover, and have the energy to actually recuperate your muscles, your tissue, your everything, clean out your body, heal overnight, all that stuff. If your body's busy digesting food all night, you're not getting the full sleep, the full recovery benefits. So it's huge to make sure that this window ends at a certain time, and that's the hard part. And this is, again, I'm skipping over to what not to do, but this is what so many people don't do, because that's the harder part. The harder part is to restrict yourself from those evening munching, munching while you're watching Netflix or whatever. Most people, sorry about that. Most people cannot separate, watching TV or relaxing with munching, and that is a problem. So that's the hard truth, is you just have to knock that out. That's that's what I wasn't doing when I started as well. I would try to, just I thought like, oh, the longer I fast during the day, the better, and I can pretty much enjoy myself at night because I only have a few hours, blah blah. It doesn't work that way. You'll start to become skinny fat because you're stressing yourself out chronically by fasting too much, and most people don't just fast, they also drink a lot of caffeine while they do that. So that's just adding to the problem. And then you're eating, and then at this point, most people don't eat the right food. They're eating the wrong foods. They think that they can get away with eating whatever they want because they're fasting, and this just screws up your health. So the most important thing about the fasting window, or the time restricted eating window more so, is that it ends 2 to 3 hours before you go to bed. And I wouldn't go any past 3 hours. Maybe that's just personally, but I don't recommend that to any of my clients or anything, because you also don't want to go to bed hungry, because that will also affect your sleep. So you want to strike this little middle ground. Another thing that I do is I do one long fast a week. So I consider this one actually a fast because it's over 20 hours. It's usually 22 hours, and I usually pick it on a day that I'm busy. So you don't want to pick this on a super relaxing day that you have nothing to do, because you're going to be miserable all day. But if you're productive, let's say a Monday even, when you have a lot of work to do and whatnot, you can kind of channel all your energy into productivity and fast all day. Because if you just try to relax and fast, it's very difficult. And this is the interesting thing about fasting too, is people have that saying like, somebody who's successful, who's chasing success, they're hungry, right? You're literally putting yourself in that mode at least one day out of the week where you're hungry, man. You're getting after it, you're being productive, and it's good to pair those 2 days together, because you'll start to feel this mental clarity and sharpness. Maybe not the first time, but after a few times of doing this, you'll adapt, you'll get used to it, and also with the time restricted eating that you're doing throughout the week, this also acclimates you to that. So during this longer fast day, let's just say, typically I do 22 hours with a 2 hour window. And what I eat in that 2 hour window is just steak and eggs. And this is just one day a week. And why do I pick steak and eggs? Because steak and eggs, I'm keeping this very high level, by the way. Because steak and eggs give you everything you need in terms of protein, fat, nutrients to, at least maintain muscle mass and the gains that you've made throughout the week and blah, blah, blah. But it doesn't give you any of the simple carbs or sugar, even from fruit. Nothing. Just steak and eggs. So you're kind of extending the fast in this sense, because you fasted for about 22 hours, so you're tapped into your stored body fat, you're depleted of glycogen, you're exercising this capability that your body has to be metabolically flexible, and then you're further instilling it because you're feeding yourself, so you're giving yourself what you need to like have a good night's sleep and kind of replenish and whatnot, but your body is still having to figure out how to convert protein to, not figure out, but it's having to convert protein to glucose to fuel you and whatnot, and undergo these necessary crucial processes that we don't force our body to undergo anymore. So I think it's the perfect combination, a long fast with steak and eggs, so that you don't kind of lose the gains that you've made per se. You still kind of give yourself the fuel that you need and kind of, comfort that you need to go to bed and whatnot, but you're not giving yourself any carbs or sugar or anything like that. So it's still a fast in a sense, because you're still fasting from the glucose. And remember, all carbs turn into glucose essentially. So you're extending it in this sense by keeping your body, forcing your body rather, to have to use other means to create energy, which is what we want. That's what creates metabolic flexibility. That's what gets you stronger on a cellular level, more resilient, and everything like that. So that's kind of the protocol that I've been following. And of course, like I said, it matters what you eat. So I do eat strict because I used to be in the camp of just fasting and eating whatever the hell I wanted. And that actually did work. Like I did get slimmer and whatnot. But then you get to the next level where it's like, okay, well, I'm still not seeing my abs as well. Like if you really want sharp, defined abs, you got to not be retaining a lot of water. You got to lower the inflammation in your body. And a lot of this does come from the right diet, the right foods. And also, the more you fast, like I said, you're developing that primal instinct. So during that fasting state, the way that you feel is a good indicator of what the food you're eating is doing to you. So if your fasts are consistently feeling like crap, you know, like this food is not fueling me properly to enable me to fast for a while. That's why something like steak and eggs, for example, gives you everything you need to carry on and undergo a fast because you're still conditioning your body like, hey, you're not getting glucose. You need to figure it out, essentially. But you're giving yourself that protein and whatnot. So there's so much more that goes into that. That sounds very oversimplified. I'm sorry, but that's essentially the idea is you need to have a good diet as well as fasting. And fasting should not just be a weight loss thing. You should be doing it more so for health, longevity, mental clarity, and even being more spiritual. Because when you enhance your physical and your mental, spiritual is the next one that comes. So that is kind of the practice that I follow. And we can get more into the diet that I'm following nowadays, maybe in the next podcast. If you guys are interested, drop a comment below. I appreciate it. Um, if I get enough comments, then 100% I'll drop the full diet. No problem disclosing that. But I just didn't want to get into it in this podcast because that'll add a bunch more time. So another thing that I do is one cheat meal a week. Um, so I do think this is important. And I don't think you need to force yourself to eat garbage, but this is the time that you kind of enjoy, you know, a dessert or a restaurant that you've been wanting to try. And I just think it's good for the soul. And I think with everything else that we're doing, staying on a good diet, time restricted eating throughout the week, one long fast a week, shocking the system a little bit, and also just kind of feeding the soul in a sense, and just kind of enjoying yourself with whatever foods you've always enjoyed or whatever. I think it's good. I think it's absolutely necessary, and I think it is not going to kill you by any means. And in fact, you want to kind of shock the body. You want to spike that metabolism. You don't want to be consistently on something. You know, well, you do want to be consistent on like a regimented plan in terms of eating and working out, but you also kind of want to shock the body in a sense. And you also don't want to lose your ability to eat certain foods because trust me, that'll happen. See, I went on a very, very strict diet for over 60 days one time, carnivore diet. And when you come off of that, when you eat other foods, you'll get extremely bloated. You might have certain allergic reactions even that you wouldn't previously have just because you've completely desensitized yourself to other types of food. So I do kind of think it's important to almost give yourself a dose of poison so you don't lose the capability to eat that. Because hey, as much as we can be hermits and whatnot, there's going to be a time where you might want to take somebody out on a date or go out with your family or whatever. And you want to be able to eat without worrying about being super bloated and feeling like crap because that will happen. So it is because we live in this kind of modern day and like it's everywhere and it's just how people socialize and whatnot. I think it's a good thing to, you know, kind of give yourself a dose of the poison once a week. So let me talk about what not to do very briefly. So this is something that I see a lot of people do, and I've alluded to this, and that is they fast late into the afternoon, maybe even into the evening, and then they eat all the way up until they go to bed. And more often than not, much more often than not, they're not eating the right food. So I see people do this all the time. Like I see people like some friends that I have on Instagram, they'll like post a story like, "Oh, I fasted today, blah blah blah," and then their next story is like a giant In and Out meal at like midnight, and you're like, dude, come on. Like this is not the way. But this is what most people think, and this is what I did to begin with too. Not saying I went and had, you know, fast food at midnight, but I certainly would go out to eat. I would eat whatever I want. Push the fast, push the fast. That's the good thing to do. Just keep fasting, bro. And then just we'll eat whatever the hell we want and gorge ourselves at night and then fall asleep. That is the worst thing that you can do. And also another thing is more often than not, when people are doing this, they're also drinking a lot of caffeine. Like somebody that I used to work with told me, "Oh yeah, I practice intermittent fasting." I'm like, "Really? Like tell me more about it." And he's like, "Yeah, I actually my doctor told me to stop because I was getting an ulcer." And I was like, "You're getting an ulcer from fasting? I've been fasting a while. I don't get ulcers." He's like, "Yeah, I was drinking like 10 cups of coffee or something." And I was like, "Dude, what the hell are you doing?" Like, the point of the fast also is you want to keep yourself empty. You don't want to be constantly engorging yourself with something, whether even if it's not food, if it's an overdose of coffee and caffeine, that's not good. That's really not good. You're just chronically stressing yourself out. I'm drinking coffee right now, so I have nothing against coffee. Um, but yeah, it's something that I think most people do because you guys have to understand there's going to be a painful sacrifice in undergoing this practice. You're going to have to learn to not eat 2 to 3 hours before you go to bed. You're going to have to cut certain foods out of your diet. Fasting is not the excuse to kind of do whatever you want. So I think people try to avoid this pain and sacrifice and change of lifestyle by simply just starving themselves all day, drinking black coffee, and then eating whatever the hell they want, drinking alcohol, stuff like that. That is not what you want to do. I would limit it to 2 to 3 at the most cups of black coffee, black, um, and even stop drinking as soon as it hits noontime. Once it's noon, you should stop. You shouldn't be drinking coffee past noon because that will also affect your sleep if you're going to bed at a normal time that a human being should go to bed. So I would say 2 to 3 cups of black coffee max while you're fasting. But there's nothing wrong with coffee. I just think overdoing it like anything else is going to set you back. Um, and another thing that a lot of people do is sweeteners. Whether they add 0 cal sweeteners to their coffee or they have a 0 cal sweetened sparkling water, or something like that. This is all garbage. And this actually it makes the fast a lot more difficult for you than it needs to be because it will start to trick your body into thinking that you're actually consuming something sweet. It might produce a little bit of insulin. It might not even necessarily throw you out of your fast, but it might increase your hunger pangs. It might just make the whole experience more uncomfortable. And this is what's referred to as a dirty fast. So if you want to keep a clean fast, you're going to keep it with absolutely nothing. No sweeteners, no nothing, just water, plain black coffee or plain tea. Don't add anything to it. Trust me. And another thing that I was doing as well, and that I recommend to a lot of clients. So a lot of my clients sometimes they'll experience like, oh, like I have a little bit of a headache during the fast. First of all, this is normal. You're adjusting. Of course, you're going to feel a little bit uncomfortable. But a lot of people maybe drink too much water without replenishing any electrolytes. Now, how do you replenish electrolytes and minerals without consuming calories? Pink salt. Salt in general, but I would say natural sea salt, pink salt is the best thing that you can kind of consume. So you can take like a teaspoon or a pinch or whatever, put it in 8 ounces of water, just a little bit of salt, drink that down, and that will help to replenish your electrolytes, your vitamins, your minerals. Not so many vitamins, but electrolytes and minerals. So that'll help to offset all of the stuff that you're losing because when you're not producing insulin, your body's not holding on to these electrolytes and minerals as much. When you're drinking so much water while you're fasting, not producing insulin or anything, you're kind of flushing everything out. So you can start to feel like crap. Um, so replenishing this with sea salt, which is of course 0 calorie, completely natural and everything, will help with that. It'll help keep you kind of sharp and on ball. Um, Another thing you should not do when it comes to the long fast, I kind of alluded to this as well, but don't try to do a long fast on a day where you have absolutely nothing to do and you might be planning to watch movies all day. Because try watching a movie when you're past like 16 hours of a fast. It's very difficult to just sit there. You're going to be kind of wired. Your body's literally pumping norepinephrine and adrenaline throughout your bloodstream. So you're kind of on a biochemical level being propelled into action. That's why it's very, I think, important to do a long fast on a day where you're being extremely productive. Because it will help fuel your productivity. Actually, you'll feel more productive. You'll feel more inclined to do work. You can't tell I'm fasted right now. No, but I'm not even that deep into a fast. It's pretty early in the morning here, but we're doing a 22-hour long one today, so we got lots of work to do. So yeah, I would definitely make sure that you have something to occupy yourself, at least mentally, right? Read books, anything like that. But just sitting there and watching something and zoning out is near impossible, and it's going to be very difficult for you. And you might be tempted to break your fast, and that will screw up everything. So try to do the long fast on a day where you have a lot of stuff to do. I'm about to come up on time here, so I'll try to rush through here. Um, well, I guess the final point, I'll cap it off with this. And I, of course, already alluded to this, but you cannot eat crap food when you're when you break your fast. That's going to ruin everything. You've got to pair fasting with a healthy, nutritious diet. You can't escape the healthy, nutritious diet part. I think a lot of people think that fasting is kind of a way out of that. Like, oh, I can still enjoy the foods I love. I'll just eat less of it. I'll just fast. And no, sorry. You got to cut out the bullshit. If you really want to see these full results, if you really want to be shredded, lean, feel your best, be optimized, if you combine eating a healthy diet with fasting, you will be fully optimized. You will hone in on your primal instincts. You'll be able to go longer bouts without eating because you're fueling yourself properly. And you're going to be able to reap more benefits from fasting because, again, you're fueling yourself properly. So I'll leave it at that for this week, guys. I hope this was helpful. Let me know if you want me to dig deeper into the current diet that I'm eating today. Happy to do so. Let me know if you have any questions at all. Join the free Discord community in the Linktree link in the description below. If you want to work with me directly, get in the best shape of your life in the next 3 months, hit apply now on that link. Or if you want to cop my course, I created a 16-week kettlebell course with also steel mace stuff and my full nutrition plan on there. So if you want to grab that, go ahead. If you want a discount on the best quality kettlebells, maces, clubs, all that, also a link for that. I got links for everything, guys. So I appreciate you tuning in. If you're watching this still and you're listening to me speak right now, that means you've enjoyed it. You're still here. So please like and subscribe. I'd appreciate it. And that is all for this week, guys. I will catch you on the next one. Peace and stay primal.